So this is example 19 from the N5 nuclear radiation section. A radioactive substance injected into a patient so that we can monitor the blood flow. So the important thing in this question is to realise that the radioactive substance is in the patient's blood and the detector is outside of the patient's body. And we're given a number of different substances which emit either beta or gamma radiation, and the substances have different half-lives. So we have substances emitting beta, 2 of them, and substances emitting gamma. Now because the detector is outside the patient's body, then it will not be able to detect any beta radiation coming from any radioactive substance in the patient's blood, because it will be blocked by the patient's skin. So options A and B are basically, you can rule them out because it's beta, it's not going to be detectable outside of the body. So that leaves you with C, D and E, which all emit gamma. So all of these, potentially the gamma radiation would be detectable on the outside of the body. But you then have to look at the half-life. So if you inject a patient with substance C, then yes, it will emit gamma, and yes, it could be detected, but if you don't get them in front of the detector within just a few seconds, then there'll be no radiation left to detect. So you can rule out C because basically the half-life is too short. You can also rule out E because this time the half-life, 2 years, is too long. Now it would work, you could take your measurements, you could do your blood flow investigation, but then you'd be sending the patient out into the world and they would remain radioactive for several half-lives, so maybe for 10 years, which is not necessary and exposes them and other people to unnecessary risk. So that really leaves you with 2 days. That's sensible. After about a week, then the patient's radioactivity levels will have gone back to background levels. So option D in here is the one to go for. So then on to example 20. A person going through an airport scanner receives a radiation dose of 0.03 microsieverts every time it's used. It says a person could have 5,000 scans a year before there would be any risk to their health. Although in fact even at that level the risk is pretty minimal, as we'll see. Calculate the total radiation dose value that would create any kind of health risk to the passenger. So the way to do this is we've got a safe limit, and 5,000 uses of the scanner, and every time you use it you get a radiation dose 0.03 microsieverts. So you work that out, that comes to be 150 microsieverts. So if you used it 5,000 times in a year, that would be 100 microsieverts per year. That would be your dose rate. So that's the answer to the problem. That's the total radiation dose that would create any kind of health risk. But how much of a health risk? That's the end of the question. It's finished. That's all I ask you to do. But you might wonder, how much of a health risk is that? So you can compare it to a 10-hour cruise in an aircraft. Say you're flying to Australia. And you'll get a small dose of radiation from cosmic radiation, and you'll actually get a dose there of 200 microsieverts approximately from a single long-haul flight.